Great. All right. So again, we're here specifically to talk about what it might look like in your classrooms to get students civically engaged through your subject matter and or course, and how using some of our curricular resources might aid in that as well. So similar to other sessions you might have attended, if you could abide by these kind of norms, and really it's about trying to be as interactive and engaged as possible through a virtual setting, right? The fun of online professional learning. So definitely feel free to use the chat often, share knowledge and ask questions. I'll try to keep my eye on it as much as possible. If you can come on screen, that'd be amazing to see all your bright summery faces. If you can't, it's understandable. And you know, the mute function when necessary. And yeah, if you would be so kind as to share your name and site you might represent, as well as subject, grade level. And there's only one question because I shortened it due to the time. But if you could just drop a little recollection about what is your first memory or feeling where you felt like you had voice and choice as a youth. So again, introductions, who you are, what you teach, where you're representing site-wise, and what's your earliest memory of feeling like you had a voice and choice. Give you a few minutes for that. Thanks, James, for getting us started. Got some recollections coming in, some sharing of experiences in the high school setting, choice when it comes to extracurriculars, and even some course assignments, right? What to have for dinner. I got that choice once a year, and it was on my birthday. Also, if you feel like this recollection would be better shared by coming off of mute, go ahead and grace us with a little telling of a story if you would like. Some folks really not feeling like they had much choice or voice until college. Yeah. Also seeing some diversity and representation here. That's great. I'm glad you all are here to make it. Thanks for sharing. And if you're still in the process, go ahead and continue to do that. That's a good one. Yeah. Electing youth student officers or student body representatives. Yeah. So clearly there are opportunities for students who are younger than college age youth to get some voice and choice in their educational experience. And that's one of the things we're here to talk about, how to infuse more of that. Because at the heart of what we do in civic education and engagement is around student voice, right? Specifically in this next less than 60 minutes, my goals with you all will be to help you become familiar with the overall kind of district youth civic engagement kind of infrastructure that's been built out over the last couple of years, and then specifically some of the opportunities that the partnership with the Mikva Challenge has been able to support in the way of having young people in the Salinas Union High School District have opportunities to get civically engaged. And specifically, I want to focus in on some of our curricular offerings, our programs, our Democratic Classrooms program, Project Soapbox, Issues to Action, and I'll touch on, if there's time, some our program around student voice committees, and showcase some of those tools that you can use in your classroom, as well as hopefully give you not adequate time, but at least a start in familiarizing yourself with the curriculum offerings and the platform that we have, which you all have access to. And here in our learning community, what we hopefully can offer each other is some energy on a Friday afternoon. I know after lunch too, that might be a little difficult, but we'll try and muster up as much as possible. Here to offer practical advice, tools, again, best practices, time for questions. And you can support all of this by, again, signing in. I mean, not signing in. I'm looking at the chat over here. Chiming in, asking questions, also sharing some of your own advice and experience in the shared kind of effort to be present here in this session. So I'm going to just double check if I can help with any. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it. That's that sign in that you want to make sure to click for this session. All right. The Mikva Challenge is a nationally recognized leader in kind of youth civic engagement opportunities. It is based out of Chicago. It's named after one of their local politicians, activists in the community in the Chicago area, Abner Mikva, and has since expanded to, again, a national organization that not only offers civics curriculum, but also a lot of different programming to get youth involved, both locally where they're at, as well as nationally. And I'll speak a little bit about some of those programs here, right? But centrally, the premise here for our organization is that youth are not apathetic, right? Sometimes we often hear that youth don't really care, they want to get involved, but rather that they are uninvited often, right? And that they care about things, but they don't really necessarily know how to put that care or concern into direct action, right? A little bit of background on Mikva's relationship with Salinas Union. We're going on our 4th year of our partnership. When I was working with the district, I had originally been introduced to Mikva as a teacher in Los Angeles when they were first coming out with some of their curricular offerings. And when I came to Salinas, I had the idea to bring them in on as one of our partners to help us develop a district-wide kind of civic program, especially as the state was just introducing the state seal of civic engagement, with which Zach spoke about earlier this morning. If you missed that session, I know there'll be recordings, and you might want to reach out to Zach and some others in the district if you're not familiar with the state seal of civic engagement and the programs that might allow some of your students to be eligible for that seal on their diploma. And in this partnership, what we've been able to accomplish, you can see some pictures here on the slide, but some of the things that we are proud to have helped Salinas youth participate in are each year we've been able to send, either virtually or in person, when we send students to Washington, D.C., at least one representative from Salinas Union to the national stage to give their soapbox speech that they've developed, their speech around the issue that they're most passionate about, and their calls to action in terms of how they would like to see people address that issue. Most recently, well, we sent a student from North Salinas this past summer to give a very impassioned and powerful speech about transgender and LGBTQ youth justice. I was also contacted by a partner at the city that shared the good news that one of our younger soapbox speech participants at the national stage the year prior had just been elected to the Salinas City Youth Council. and is the only freshman serving on that council. So we're really excited about that student's continued kind of engagement, right, and being civically active. We also, to get there, we've hosted at least 3 years now running a local soapbox speech event where the top kind of speeches, the most powerful speeches are given in person locally. We have been able to also send students to be part of a national youth summit, which is connected but like separate from the actual speech portion of the summer programming. And so these students are a part of a national-wide kind of cohort all year, and then they are able to meet up in Washington, D.C. with their counterparts from across the country, and also get a chance to engage with their elected representatives in Congress. And I'll talk a little bit more about one of our highlights from one of our students from ALL SUHSD later on. And last year, we were really excited to really get off the ground a district-wide student voice committee, which you can see some pictures here down in the bottom left, as well as having our civic curriculum be integrated into the Migrant Saturday Academies, as well as the Migrant Youth Leadership Council. So we really try to be a partner that can serve different facets of the district and help out people in different areas in different ways, all with the point of getting youth more involved. One of the things that helps out with that is our curriculum, and you can kind of see here we have a lot of different curricular offerings. Some of them I'm not going to be able to talk about today, like for instance, like our elections in actions, as well as our contemporary issues lessons. But I will be focusing on the kind of core curricular programs that we have that you have access to, that are free, ready to use as is, and or easily adaptable. And I'm speaking on that last one from experience. My last assignment in the district, I was teaching ALD, 7th grade ALD at ALL SUHSD, and I was able to easily implement the Project Soapbox curriculum in a very kind of constrained time frame after LPAC testing, and I was able to have every single one of my students go through that program and develop a speech, many of which were very powerful and were given to all of their classroom peers, and many of which were emotional on a lot of levels. And it was just really awesome to see those students be able to get up and have the confidence to speak on something that was important to them. Here you can also see, and I'll share this in the chat as well, but if you don't already have an account on the Mikva Challenge curriculum platform, you can go to that link and then put in the Salinas Union access code, and then you'll be able to create an account with your own kind of username and whatnot. And so I'll put that in the chat a little later. First, I want to talk a little bit about a democratic classroom. It's our program. It's embedded into each of our curricular programs as like the first start, but it's also one that we feel should be kind of first approached at the beginning of the year, and it can be in any classroom in any subject. But before I talk about what our democratic classroom program has in terms of like features and different lessons, I'm curious to know what you all think a democratic classroom is, what that might mean to you, what's it feel like, look like, and what makes it different than a traditional classroom. And I'd love if some folks could share on the mic as well as in the chat.
I think a democratic classroom is one where everyone feels heard and they all have the space to share their ideas and their thoughts and opinions.
Awesome. Thank you, Rose, for breaking the ice there. And definitely, right? The ability to be heard, right? Seen and heard and respected for your identity and your perspectives, right? What else are folks thinking? It's called wait time.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Galvina, thank you.
Okay, good. Mine was saying it wasn't working. No, I would say like in the past we've come up with like classroom contracts and things. So, we could, like, let them come up with their own set of rules and like how they want to run their environment. Seconding what Rose said about incorporating student voices into the room and making them feel safe when they're sharing. So like if we talk about politics, everybody remains neutral. You don't go and point the finger because someone has an idea that's different or a vision that's different than yours. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Shaping classroom culture, right, is probably the first way that you can institute some democratic practices, right? That's actually the foundation of some of our early lessons in this particular program.
Yeah, we did classroom constitutions, and I let them have what was called Starbucks mood. So there'd be a day where if everybody did what they're supposed to do on task, they have a day where they could work with their headsets on and things, and then they came up with the rules on how they would like manage each other on to get to that goal per se. Yeah.
Awesome. Classroom constitutions as opposed to just impose rules from the from the ruler, right? And I'm curious, like you could take that to the next level and have a process for amending the Constitution, right? Later in the year as things come up, right? Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Jamie's put in the chat that giving each student's opportunity to participate rather than just giving a small selection of usually high achieving students. Yeah. So going back to Rose's, point about having opportunities to be heard, that should be applied equitably, right, across the board to everyone. And opportunities, you can't be heard if there's no opportunities to use your voice, right? So student voice is central to this, and student voice can be integral to formulating class culture, class agreements and norms, right? Deciding what types of assignments and or topics might be covered or included in your curriculum. Some of the things that get in the way of that, right, is that it requires teachers to share power. And sometimes that causes a little bit of fear, right, and anxiety around, how much control we will have in our classroom. And so our Democratic Classroom program is designed to kind of help teachers move through that, kind of discomfort around like sharing power in a space, trying to build a community of learners, right? And so, you can see a 10 lesson sequence here where there's lessons on building community, lessons on, what makes a good leader, and then getting down to, tools for civic dialogue, as well as, understanding how the classroom is essentially can be a microcosm of understanding other democratic institutions that they are part of, right? Whether that be schools and or communities and cities at large, right, including the broader community of our country. So these lessons are available for you to use, adapt, integrate, and what have you, and they're the basis for all of our programs, right? Our next program, which is very popular, has probably been the most popular in Salinas so far, is our Project Soapbox program. It's the one I spoke a little bit about, integrated into my ALD class at ALL SUHSD. And it's about, having students engage on speaking out around issues that they are passionate about, that they care about, right? And so when students, we call it soapbox, right? In terms of like, we actually had teachers in the district who have built actual soapboxes, right? Little crates where students stand on and deliver in their, respective, town or community square, right? And so they get a chance in their classrooms, and then moving beyond, as the district has offered opportunities for, again, those district-wide in-person events where students from different sites come together and in front of community, right, to speak passionately about their issues, and more importantly, have a call to action on how to get involved to address those issues, right? And those issues have varied from, whoops, going ahead here, have varied from, issues around farm workers' rights, school issues around uniform, to broader community issues around gun violence and gang violence. They run the gamut, right? And again, it speaks to when you give your students opportunities to have choice and voice, they will often surprise you with what they choose, right? So I would ask you all this question, and as kind of research-based best practices oriented ourselves around, like, asking students to do things that we might not necessarily do ourselves is not necessarily always going to yield those results that you would like. So putting yourself in the role of someone who is thinking about civic engagement on the personal level, what are some things that you would change if you could change in your respective community? And I'd love for some ideas to be shared again on the chat or on the microphone. What are some things that you are currently concerned about that you wish, if you given the opportunity, that you could affect? I know there's a laundry list to choose from, so maybe settling on one is the challenge. Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, I was just reading an article about some teachers in the district north of you all who have decided to sue the county for violation, what they are defining as violation of pesticide regulation and its impact on students and communities that they serve. So definitely environmental impact. What are some other things that are issues that you all are passionate about?
I would like to see like more money allocated to services for people to have stable housing in our community. I read recently that Monterey County has the highest rate of homelessness among teenagers here because I guess when they raise the rent, families can't afford to move into another place. So that's resulting in a higher rate of homelessness among teens. So I'd like to see something that could help that cause.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that currently in Salinas, in the city, there is an active campaign, right, to address some of that, more broadly speaking, but definitely it would have an impact on young people. Yeah, Rose, expanding public transit. Absolutely. Which again connects back to some of that environmental impact potentially, as well as, affordability in terms of being able to sustain a life here, right? So I'm sure there are more, and I think, there's a good one, no doubt. As I put all my kids on an iPad for the next 45 minutes. So these are all great issues, and I think one thing that I would consider is that oftentimes when you ask kids this question, sometimes they have a hard time answering, not because they don't care about anything or they think their communities are perfect, but it's quite often just kind of getting over the shock of being asked that, right, in a way where their teachers are really wanting to hear. And so sometimes seeding some ideas is necessary to get the ball rolling, right? But as we can see examples of young people taking small and big actions, right? Because again, once they're invited or they realize that they have the ability to impact change and transform things, they take that initiative, right? Especially when it is supported by adults who care. So in our Project Soapbox curriculum, again, the first lessons are in the unit 1 are really grounded in that democratic classroom program, because we feel and we've seen that to go straight into like identifying issues and having like real in-depth conversations, often like vulnerable conversations where people are sharing deeply and personally about like problems in the community and experiences that they've had, and ideas they might have to solve them. It's a lot harder to do that when you haven't built that classroom culture to do, right? As you get into the later units, you start having these lessons around, you know, identifying the issue, right, and your connection to it, engaging in some research around what these issues, like how they are presenting themselves, and that includes like their own personal lived testimonial experiences, and then of course going into like structuring a speech, right? What makes a good speech, and those communicative skills, right, which I know are part of your recently newly adopted portrait of a graduate, right? And so there are lessons on each of these kind of facets. And again, recognizing that not every teacher has all the room in the world and all the time to infuse their curriculum and expand it out. I've seen a lot of creative ways on how to take some of these lessons and integrate it into something you're already kind of doing, or kind of bound it more so it doesn't take up all this extra time that you might not have, right, in your pacing. And so that brings me to our kind of biggest, most robust curricular program, which is the Issues to Action program. And so before I kind of jump into some of the details around this program, I'm curious to hear and read what are some examples of actions that your young people, that you've witnessed young people take, right, and on what kinds of issues, right? And or vice versa, what are some actions that you have taken on issues that are important to you, right? Like what could you point to where you have engaged civically? What are some things that you've seen, witnessed, and or been a part of? Sorry. My mouse is really sensitive today.
I was very impressed with the number of young people who attended the No Kings rally in Salinas. The Hands Off rally was mainly retirees. I think I was one of the youngest people there at 38. But then the No Kings rally more recently was so many young people and so many current high schoolers, which was just incredible to see. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people out there. As far as the second question, during COVID, I believe, when we were at home, I created and shared a slide deck on LGBTQ students and using pronouns in the classroom and navigating that space. It was a conversation that had started at my site, but I think admin didn't feel comfortable leading that conversation. But I was a site rep at that time. I'm not currently, but I felt like it was really important to let teachers know that they're legally required to use a student's pronouns, that the student is indicating that they use. And this isn't really like I don't know, what about my comfort level? Like it's a legal requirement and a moral one and an ethical one. And so I felt that was really important. And if admin wasn't going to do it, then I did it. And thankfully they gave me the space to do that during a virtual staff meeting.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Rose. Those are really powerful examples, and there are just as powerful examples in the chat as well, right? Students attending peaceful protests against ICE abductions, working specifically on their campuses to get more recycling programs going, creating crosswalks to increase safety. I mean, the reality, right, that we all know is that there's no shortage of issues. Really, it's about, can we offer opportunities to structure a process where students are not only learning about issues, right, but also being supported in being able to take action on those issues. And so the issues to action curriculum is, again, predicated on 3 units and a 7-step kind of process, which you see here. And you can kind of see steps 1 through 3. Those are have integrated the democratic classrooms and the Project Soapbox curriculum in there, right? And step 2, where you get a chance to go deeper into analyzing and identifying a community context, right? And again, this is in supporting students with identifying issues, again, because they might not often come readily available, readily willing to share or just think about what kind of issues are passionate about, because oftentimes just living their lives, they've normalized things that they've seen, right? Without maybe having the time and space to think about, well, why is what I'm seeing a thing, and what might it look like if it were not a thing? Steps 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 get into the taking informed action process. So you go researching, analyzing power, planning, and taking action. And then, of course, that kind of culmination of, finding a place where you can showcase and, engage in both individual and collective reflection about how this process not only maybe possibly transformed the issue that you were attempting to work on, but also yourself in the process, right? And so some of the highlights of those things, right? Knowing ourselves and our communities. If I could get a volunteer to read the student quote.
I can do it.
Exactly.
My family never felt like they fit into the larger American narrative. We never saw our stories, our struggles reflected, and we felt largely ignored. Not feeling like we fit into the American story informed how we engaged or didn't engage. We didn't vote because we honestly didn't think it mattered. We felt that since we, as Puerto Ricans, were largely ignored, why would we vote? Why should we vote? Elected officials were not speaking to what was important to us anyway. The first time I voted for someone who looked like people I knew, had a story I could relate to, and for the most part, spoke to things that resonated with me. Michelle.
Thank you, Zach. And so this quote kind of signifies why it's important to spend some time in this process, getting to know who you are and how you situate within your various communities, right? It's a very important part of identifying issues, right, that you care about enough to speak out on and work towards resolving, because you spent also that time getting to know yourself and how you've been impacted potentially by those issues. Another key component to identifying a successful kind of issues to action process is that the issues that are identified are actionable, right? That they are clearly able to identify people, real people in their own lives or in their own surrounding communities that have been impacted by these issues, that they're people that they can be in contact with, and that the process helps them learn who has the power to affect these issues in addition to themselves, right? Again, that research component, and also being able to collaborate with other young people, right? All of those things which we can kind of see alignment with and that are parallel to some of the key components of your portrait of a graduate, right? Again, you can also go a little further in helping to kind of seed ideas for issues, right? You can institute a voting kind of process in your classroom, again, a la democratic classrooms, to have students come together and select an issue, or maybe even vote on it, right, through a voting process. Sometimes I've seen teachers use the actual soapbox speeches that students give to kind of be a part of this kind of deciding as a class, like what issues are we going to focus on in the issues to action component, or potentially, through Socratic dialogue, reaching consensus. And then, again, going deeper into like the research and goal setting, so you can take informed action. Once you have identified those issues, then you are going through a process of trying to really understand these issues at a deeper and more critical level, right? So here's an example of one of our activities that gets students to look at root causes versus just symptoms, right? And here's an example of a student who has completed that, right? Because so often we don't have enough time in our curriculum to really get down to like, well, why? You know, why is this an issue? And keep asking that question. And so here's an example of what that might look like, right? And so when you go through that process with students, it really helps them really get to more actionable, more kind of solutions-oriented things that might have a better impact. Another example of looking through different lenses, right? In terms of like, where is this issue present, you know, and how does it impact me as an individual versus a community or at a societal level, right? These are some of the lessons that are embedded into the Issues to Action curriculum. By show of thumbs or hands or, you know, how many of you all are doing some type of research in your class already? Okay. Yeah, I feel like research is something that I think a lot of us are expected to kind of do at some point in the year. What makes some of the research in the Issues to Action program a little different is often that we're accessing local data and in different ways, right? So we are often contributing to data collection through qualitative means of like interviews and observations, like some of our teachers in the district often use photo voice as a way to, you know, kind of document a community issue visually so that the students can then, you know, kind of think more about like, well, here's an example of the issue, and then start that research, that deeper research process as to what they might be able to do about that, as well as engage in quantitative kind of research and data accumulation, and having students survey either their peers and or their community members around not only the issues, but also maybe what kind of solutions they might propose, right? And then going into goal setting and understanding the difference between individual change and institutional change, right? So for example, a lot of students often choose school cafeteria as the site of civic change, right? And recognizing that on the individual level, they can put together a speech and or presentation and a campaign to have students make healthier eating choices, right? But institutionally, if they wanted to make a change, that they might try to create a new school lunch, and potentially with a community partner that could help bring some different food options to the lunch menu at their school site. We also through this curriculum get students to kind of like deeply analyze different people's motivations, including people who would support their proposed changes, as well as those who might stand in the way of said change, in terms of like trying to get students to analyze it. Like, people have different motivations for different perspectives and viewpoints, right? And then just as our, you know, teaching explicitly different theories of change, right, in different ways where you can take specific action. So obviously, in terms of like raising awareness, often students default to this as like their realm of change, because it's something that they are frequently asked to do, right? Educate people on things. But advocating for something, right, like going to a school board meeting and advocating for a certain change, is a different type of action, a different type of informed action, and as well as is building a coalition of folks who maybe from across different spheres, maybe it's different clubs, different student groups on campus, but they come together to kind of support some type of change, either at the individual or institutional level. I'm running a little short on time, but I definitely think that this is an important example to highlight. This is probably our highest profile example in recent years of a student who was part of the Mikva program, had one of their teachers institute Project Soapbox speech challenge, and ended up being selected as a national representative for Salinas 2 years ago, 3 now maybe. And when she went to Washington over the summer to give her speech on farm worker realities and respecting farm worker lives, and learning about farm worker realities, her elected representative was in the audience and was so moved by that speech that she invited her the next day to her office on Capitol Hill, and they co-authored legislation that would create a resolution to honor farm workers in Congress. And so, again, just to step back and reiterate what that is, that's a sophomore engaging in this type of work, and then in the summer between her sophomore and junior year, having co-authored legislation with an elected U.S. Representative in Congress, right? Her own representative around the issue that she cared about, right? Because that issue affected her life directly. Outside of the classroom, we're really excited to continue to try and support student voice committees and a student advisory council district-wide. Every campus has a collection of students who have been involved in a district-wide student advisory council. I know the new superintendent also has her own advisory council to the superintendent, as well as you all have youth representatives on the school board. So this is a program that we have that kind of helps teachers think about how they might either continue to support and grow or create a student voice committee on their campus and be connected to these kind of broader district-wide structures. And again, those efforts were in part led by Tamisha Allen Smith and Leticia Diaz Garcia, your all's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion specialists at the district, right? And one of the campaigns that has been being worked on in recent years and having students take the lead on is the End Slurs and Be Inclusive campaign, where students at each campus last year were able to organize some level of action around that particular campaign to end the use of racial slurs. So these are I'm going to stop sharing now. These are our programs that you all, as district teachers, are able to access and use how you see fit. And so what I'd love is for you all to have at least 8 to 10 minutes to kind of peruse the actual curricular site, maybe get set up and create an account. And I'm going to drop that in the chat for those of you who don't have an account already. And this will be kind of like the sandbox time, right? Just a little time to familiarize yourself with what's available. And then we can come back and talk through any questions you might have or ideas you might have. Does that sound okay for you all? Great. So I will pull us back in at 1:55, and I'll stay here in case anyone wants to have a small conversation currently. And if that bothers you, maybe just mute us or turn the sound off while you were perusing the Mikva curricular site. Sorry, my mouse sensitivity interrupted the lo-fi flow there. But we do have a few more minutes. And I see that some folks have had some success in signing up, and hopefully you get a little bit of chance to kind of peruse the site. And we'll come back in about 2 or 3 minutes. Marie, go ahead, and you have a raised hand.
Yes, I had a question. I am trying to log in the time for attendance, and it's not letting me. It says, actually, I don't see your session here. I see it for 2:15, but I don't see it for 1 p.m.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting, because I spoke with Amber and Jennifer this morning, because I saw that there was a 2:15 signature on that as well. I don't have access to that sign in, but what I can do is, and maybe Zach, you can help me with this. I can make sure that you all are able to sign in and get credit for this session, and have Amber and Jen adjust that on their side.
Because it does give a manual option. It says the times that you're able to pick, and then it says other. So I went ahead and put other. I put 1 p.m. in the name of the session. Hopefully
Okay.
that's good enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure in case you had like another link, but if that's the same issue, then I'll go ahead and do that one.
Yeah, it's the only link that they provided for me. But
Okay.
thank you for sharing that tip. If others want to do that, just put other and put 1 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
either way, it should be okay if you use the pre-slugged one and has that 2:15 to 3:15 spot. The recording or the transcript, or not the transcript, but the attendance for the Google Meet is cross-referenced to that too. So it's going to have the timestamps on there for the Google Meet when people are attending. So either one, if you put in other and you put the 1 to 2 spot, or you did the pre-slugged one and did the 2:15 to 3:15, it should be fine still. It just might then at your 2:15, if you go to a 2:15 spot, if you put other on the other one, then that it should be fine still. So either way, should be it'll get all sorted out.
Awesome. Yeah, want to make sure you all are recognizing and get compensated for the time. And speaking of time, I think that kind of brings us to the time that we have. So again, knowing it was not adequate enough time to really dive deep into the platform, but at the very least, hopefully you all were able to sign up and have access to all the curriculum that's on our site. And I'd love to hear if there are any ideas and or questions, either from what you saw or what you heard during the presentation around how you might embed some civic engagement lessons and or opportunities for your students in your upcoming curriculum or course this academic year. What are some things that you are thinking about doing and or questions you still might have around how to do some of this work and use some of the Mikva curriculum as well as partnership opportunities? So thoughts that you have, questions that you have. If any. Does it seem doable? Important? You need any more help? Great to hear that, Rose. Yeah. One of the things we're really trying to do is to have a clear idea and also kind of like representatives at each site that are engaged in doing some of this work. Yeah. Maybe what feels too big? Maybe say more a little bit about that, Rose.
It's just it's so broad. Like when we were talking about one issue that's important to us, and it was like public transit. Well, yeah, that connects to everything. I mean, by nature, right? But there's just so much, and I can see how students would get overwhelmed with like, well, what do you mean? Just focus on one thing. It's all connected. And I know sorry. I know I'm feeling that way too.
Yeah, I think in order to have that kind of sentiment, not get in the way of you at least trying, which I don't think it's going to get in the way of you per se, but you know, and Zach was really good about stressing this in his session earlier in the morning. Like small things can often like really lead to, you know, really impactful changes, right? So if it's not a whole issues to action project, right, that is overwhelming for a variety of reasons, then maybe it is just like the soapbox component, right? Or maybe it's a part of the issues to action, you know, lessons, right? That you know that it's like at least you can keep it bound, right? So it doesn't spin out of control and confuse both students and yourselves, right? And there's various ways to do that, but I also am always kind of impressed with when teachers start just doing a little bit and all of a sudden they find a way to do something that just really has like a really bigger impact or footprint than they might have initially thought. But we're here to help, right? So your internal team at the district, myself, you can reach out. I put my email in the chat. Other questions or comments around doing this kind of stuff? Or for those of you who've done some stuff already, like any advice for folks?
I think one thing that you kind of shared, Mark, is like those small actions. When you look at Mikva's curriculum is so robust, and there's so many things that you can do to kind of like walk through the issues to action of the Project Soapbox. And then when you're talking about adding that to the fact that you're talking about these often has big systemic problems, and it can seem like very overwhelming, where it's like, okay, if I've got 9 lessons here and I've got this giant issue here that I'm trying to address, like, where do we even start? Finding ways within your curriculum to kind of break that down and say, like, okay, I'm going to take this, you know, it's built as a whole step, as a process, but if I take one step and I apply it to one root issue that's a part of this bigger issue, it makes it more bite-sized and more manageable for students and also for your classroom time, and that makes it a lot more hopefully approachable. And there's so much good resources in the Mikva curriculum. It's a matter of going through and kind of seeing like, which of these great resources can I make work for my class and for my students? And then over time, as that gets built in, then it's kind of like, okay, how do we expand it, or how does it naturally expand as students get into it too? And they start to like, okay, well, what do we do next with this issue? I got, you know, we're doing this, like, how can we go on from there? And it's like, okay, well, here's the next step of the process. And so, but just getting started can seem overwhelming, but finding a small area to apply some of the concepts and some of the resources is a place to kind of build from.
Definitely. And again, we are here, partners in this work. Definitely feel free to reach out. I have, well, one, thank you for being here and thank you for your time. The evaluation link for this session is in the chat. And I really do wish you the best of luck this academic year. I know that teaching is always tough, but slightly different in these times. And, you know, any support that we can lend your way and your students in the way of civic engagement this year, please feel free to reach out. And I hope you all have a good rest of your summer as it's winding down. Take care of yourselves. And thanks for all you do. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording somehow.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.